For a look inside the amusement park business, a high-stakes race to be biggest, fastest, and best. I'm Bill Flannagan, and I'll have that story coming up on Eyewitness News.
Summer's the time for baseball, picnics, and in this part of the world, amusement parks. Pennsylvania has more amusement parks than any other state, 14 in all.
And Patty, as you might expect, they are battling each other as well as parks in neighboring states for a share of the 250 million park visits that Americans make each year. Tonight, Money editor Bill Flannagan takes a ticket to ride for a three-part look inside the amusement park business. Bill?
And Americans pay plenty for those tickets to ride, Ray. An all-day pass at the big Midwestern parks can range from $13 to $20. That doesn't begin to include the food and souvenirs you buy once you're inside. Well, to get you to drive some distance to do it and to keep you coming back, an amusement arms race is underway. The escalation centers on one of the oldest and still the most popular attractions, the roller coaster. Curling ribbons of steel, rattling, rumbling rollers on wood keep you coming back for more in the amusement park war. What do you like best about that one?
When it goes No, when it gets slow.
When it gets slow.
When it drops. No, when it goes up. When it goes up, the humps and then go down.
Can I ask you what you thought of that experience?
Oh, I love it. I think it's great. Ask her what she thought of it.
I hated it.
You hated it? Now, why? What was wrong with that ride?
I just couldn't open my eyes and had to bend down the whole time.
She's got a ticket to ride, and she don't care.
This summer, 17 new, moved, or refurbished roller coasters have opened nationwide, the largest number since the Great Depression. In the 1920s, almost 2,000 of the rides dipped and climbed in cities across the country. Today, there are about 200, more than 24 in Pennsylvania and Ohio alone. Paul Rubin is the editor of Roller Coaster Magazine.
I think every park would like to have the bragging rights to having the biggest, the fastest, or the wildest coaster, at least for 1 year. As a result, we're seeing something akin to roller coaster wars, an arms race, if you will.
Steel helped create the roller coaster arms race. Modern steel coasters climb higher, roll faster, and do stunts unimaginable on a traditional wooden track. By and large, they do it safely. Ron Toomer is the top designer of steel roller coasters.
Let's face it, you go on a big roller coaster because it's a fearsome thing and it's going to scare you, you know, but somewhere in the back of your head, you know that you're going to get back in the station and get out and everything will be okay.
Roller coasters carry about 200 million passengers each year, with an annual average of about 1.5 fatalities. The odds of a fatal accident are about 1 in 60 million for each park visit, making fixed amusement park rides about 6 times as safe as domestic air travel.
The superpower in the amusement park arms race just may be Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio. The park has 9 roller coasters, more roller coasters than any other amusement park in the world.
Cedar Point's star coaster is the Magnum XL 200. Its 205-foot first hill is the tallest in the world. Its 194-foot vertical drop the steepest, and its 72-mile-per-hour top speed the fastest as well.
Wow! How important are the superlatives? How much do you think they mean or really add to the park?
I think when you talk in terms of something like a world-class roller coaster where there's nothing else that can match it in terms of speed, angle of descent, length, I think in those terms it does have some major impact on the park.
Magnum's held the title 2 years in a row.
You can have all the hype in the world, but if that ride does not, carry through on that, then that will get around sooner or later, too.
So far, that hasn't been a problem for Cedar Point. Jeff Brown is from Plum Borough.
What brings you all the way to Ohio to ride a roller coaster?
The Magnum. It's awesome. That 200 feet drop, you can see Canada. It's just amazing.
So is the price tag. Magnum cost $8 million. The most expensive ride Cedar Point has ever built.
Last year, the average attendance at the nation's amusement parks rose 1.5%. However, 7 parks that added new roller coasters saw their attendance increase by 8.5%. At that rate, a roller coaster pays for itself within 2 seasons.
Even so, it's one thing for Cedar Point, one of the nation's 10 busiest amusement parks, to pay off a multi-million-dollar investment in a couple of years.
Good morning, Kennywood.
It's another thing entirely for the dozen or so mid-sized parks scattered across Pennsylvania. Do they join the amusement arms race? Can they afford to sit it out? Well, tomorrow night we'll see just how 3 Pennsylvania parks are responding to the amusement arms race, and you may have heard that next year Pittsburgh's own Kennywood is planning to join it in a big way.
Yeah, did you have white knuckles on some of those?
Usually the first time out, especially on the Magnum. Once I did it once, then I was able to loosen up on the grip.
All right, Bill, thanks. While maglev is on track for the future, another kind of track transportation from the past is also getting a lot of attention. Pittsburgh is in the middle of a multi-million-dollar roller coaster arms race. Amusement parks across the country are battling to build the biggest, the fastest, and the best attraction. Tonight in his special assignment, Ticket to Ride, money editor Bill Flannagan says the fight is especially fierce around here. Bill?
Well, Ray, we live right in the middle of what coaster enthusiasts call a golden triangle of thrill rides. From Cedar Point and Kings Island in western Ohio to Dorney Park in eastern Pennsylvania stand dozens of roller coasters. Each year, the biggest parks spend millions of dollars for bragging rights to the best attraction in North America, if not the world. And even mid-sized parks find the roller coaster arms race hard to avoid. Any mid-sized amusement park in America can roll you, wet you, or spin you around. So it takes more than the ordinary ride to set a park apart. It takes a ride that's the biggest, the fastest, the best.
1, 2, 3.
It's number 1 all over. Yep, I've been to a lot of amusement parks and on a lot of roller coasters. This is number 1, definitely. Well, I used to like the Beast, but I think this is better, a lot better. Oh, yeah.
Thrill seekers are a fickle lot. A Beast that's best one year might lose its place to a Cyclone, a Magnum, or an Ultra Twister before the next season begins.
Each year somewhere there's a major escalation in the amusement park battle to be the best. More often than not, it revolves around a roller coaster.
Hersheypark in central Pennsylvania brought the first steel looping coaster to North America 13 years ago. Franklin Shear is Hershey's assistant vice president in corporate operations. Is it tough to keep up with that level of competition?
It's what we call the arms race in roller coasters, and it seems like everybody wants to have the tallest and strongest and longest.
Not quite everyone. If it weren't for PennDOT's plans to build a new expressway to Pittsburgh's airport, White Swan Park would still be in business. For 35 years, owners Margaret Kleeman and Roy Todd proved a small park could survive by catering to corporate and community outings.
And here you didn't worry about your children. The park was so small, they didn't get too far away from you, and you could play games. Didn't have to worry about your children.
Yeah, there's not too many places like this left anymore.
No, I think this is the last in western Pennsylvania that I know of. I think all of the smaller parks does this, and I say now, there's no more.
Until the 1950s, amusement parks in general were dying, swallowed by expanding suburbs and an unsavory reputation. Then in July 1955 came Disneyland. The theme park concept revolutionized the industry. Disney parks in California and Florida continue to attract almost 1/5 of the nation's 250 million park visits each year. Hershey adopted the theme park approach in 1971.
This is a destination. Hershey, Pennsylvania, Chocolate Town, USA is a destination where people can come and literally spend multi-days, weeks if they'd like.
Hershey's location in a vacation area has helped it avoid annual head-to-head combat with bigger parks in the roller coaster arms race. But it still can't afford to ignore the new and different. This year, for example, Hershey spent $7.5 million introducing the Flying Falcon, a spinning ride 105 feet tall, expanding its kiddie rides, and renovating its arcade. Laura Baker coordinates the park's publicity.
Well, we try to keep them coming back, but what we really hope is that people will come here and they'll see how nice Hersheypark is, and they'll come back again, if not this year, then next year, to see what we have that's new.
Pittsburgh's Kennywood Park defies the conventional wisdom. Harry Henninger is the park's president.
Kennywood is sort of the same way it always has been. We aren't large enough to get into the quote-unquote arms war on a regular basis, so we do a major attraction on about a 5-year schedule.
Of course, Kennywood already has an enviable arsenal of amusements.
Oh, here comes the moment of truth. Hey! My favorite part of the ride. Right here. Yep. Sort of attraction every amusement park dreams about.
The surprise hills and quick turns of the 22-year-old Thunderbolt consistently place it on many of the roller coaster world's 10 best lists.
It's sort of made us recognizable throughout the country because of its reputation, and it's got to be known as this wonderful roller coaster. Aficionados of roller coasters around the country got to know it, and so your name comes to the forefront on a more national basis than a regional.
Even so, Kennywood intends to go the Thunderbolt one better and build a modern steel roller coaster to rival the biggest and best rides in the country. Well, so far, Kennywood is keeping plans for its new coaster close to the vest. But tomorrow night, we'll tell you what we can about what's in store. And we'll take you to Salt Lake City, Utah to visit the designers of the biggest, fastest roller coasters in the world. And Ray and Patty, that includes the new one being planned for Pittsburgh.
What's the ballpark figure for putting up a roller coaster now?
Well, nowadays, the one in Cedar Point, the new one they built last year, cost $8 million, including all the support facilities and whatnot, but several $1 million easily.
And are there a number of roller coaster designers throughout the country?
There's only 2 in the United States. One does steel roller coasters, and one in Cincinnati does wood roller coasters.
Yeah, interesting. Thanks, Bill. Just ahead, a roller coaster record.
And a look behind the scenes where the world's biggest and fastest roller coasters are built.
There was a landmark of sorts today in the roller coaster business. At Kings Island Amusement Park in Cincinnati, a roller coaster fanatic took his 10,000th ride on the Racer roller coaster. 27-year-old Don Helbig took his first ride on that wooden coaster in June of '81, and he says it was love at first ride. Since then, he's traveled 6,467 miles on the Racer, enough to travel from New York to Los Angeles 2 1/3 times. He has also waited in line, the equivalent of 104 days. Well, if Don is the king of coaster riders, then perhaps Kennywood Park here in Pittsburgh is one capital of roller coasters.
And next spring, Kennywood hopes to secure superpower status. Tonight, Money editor Bill Flannagan concludes his special assignment, Ticket to Ride, with a look at what's in store at Kennywood. Bill?
Details are a little bit hard to come by, Patty. We know that Kennywood is planning to build a giant steel roller coaster to replace the laser loop. We also know the ride's being designed by the Utah company that created the current title holder for world's tallest, fastest roller coaster. Pittsburgh may be the scene of a major escalation in what's become an amusement park arms race.
Now, baby, don't care.
In the beginning, roller coasters were made of wood. Trains named Cyclone, Gemini, and Thunderbolt plunged down 100-foot hills at speeds approaching 60 miles an hour.
Something about a wooden roller coaster,
Exactly. The rickety, the racks, the bangs and the clicks and the clacks, and just the thrill of being on an old roller coaster. You can go to any park in the world and ride a real ride. I'd like to come to Kennywood and ride the wooden roller coaster rides.
A real ride?
What's the best ride at the park?
The laser loop.
The laser loop. Now, why the laser loop and not the Thunderbolt?
Because it has a loop.
Counting down. 3, 2, 1, go!
Steel has redefined the roller coaster. The metal makes possible loops that turn you upside down, plus heights and speeds unattainable in wood. Paul Rubin is editor of Roller Coaster Magazine.
I think in the past couple of years, steel roller coasters have come of age. They're combining the stunts that they've become very popular for with high-speed drops, incredible amounts of negative gravity. Perhaps the best example is Magnum XL 200 at Cedar Point.
The Magnum is the tallest, fastest roller coaster ever built, and at $8 million, one of the most expensive.
It was fun. I had my hands up the whole way.
Best roller coaster I've ever been on.
Next year, Kennywood Park hopes coaster enthusiasts will be saying that about its new ride. The park plans to replace the 10-year-old Laser Loop with a giant steel coaster of its own. Harry Henninger is president.
I think it's just because you feel that the people that ride the Thunderbolt now, as much as they appreciate it, look and see what else is going on or hear or read, and they think, well, why don't they have a double looping coaster or a steel coaster?
This is the company that's hard at work designing Kennywood's newest roller coaster attraction, Aerodynamics of Salt Lake City, Utah. The small custom engineering company got its start in the 1950s building rides for Disneyland. Walt Disney himself was a part owner. On its own today, Aero does everything from building monorail cars for the Los Angeles County Fair to constructing the tallest, fastest roller coasters in the world. Ron Toomer is president and chief designer.
We like to think, and I think with some truth, that roller coasters are the reason people go to amusement parks. All the rest of the stuff is there to keep them busy when they're not waiting in line for the big roller coaster.
Aero coasters conquer corkscrews, vertical loops, and ride suspended beneath the tracks. The company's even experimenting with a rotating coaster called the Pipeline. Dal Freeman is chief engineer at Aerodynamics.
Kennywood is really great because they've got a setting which has allowed us to do some very special things for them that no one else has.
Kennywood's owners have acknowledged that their big new ride will take advantage of the park's hilly terrain, plunging down a ravine toward the Mon River below. Rolling terrain helps designers keep more of a coaster's track close to the ground, and that adds extra excitement. Is it going to stack up with the spectacular rides you've been able to build at Cedar Point, at Busch Gardens, and all these other places?
Yeah, without letting the cat out of the bag, it is, absolutely. It's going to be a big ride.
Track for Kennywood's costly new ride is already piling up near the shore of the Great Salt Lake. Multi-million-dollar, millions and millions to put in something like this?
Millions and millions. I don't even have a final budget on it, but the last large expenditure was the Raging Rapids, and we were over the $2.5 million, and we're going to far exceed that.
Far exceed that. Wow. It scares me.
After all, in the escalating amusement arms race, scares are what it's all about. Well, Kennywood's considered a couple of dozen names for its new steel coaster, and just this week, the park picked one, the Steel Phantom. And next week, Ray and Patty, Kennywood intends to release sketches and details of just what's in store next year.
Has this been one of your favorite series to shoot?
This has been a lot of fun, but it does get grueling when you ride a roller coaster 4 or 5 times in a row, I have to admit.
Well, thanks for sharing it with us, Bill.